there's a lot of people on the left talking about which companies are providing paid leave, and they're upset
Yeah.
about that or whatever. But then those same companies and even other companies are doing so really well. Like they're doing good in the market. So that's what I wanted to talk with you
Yeah,
about then.
I mean, so I think there's two categories, right? Like there are companies that are doing good by running their businesses, right? Which is true of the overwhelming majority of businesses every day, right? I mean, we're talking about Amazon. I mean, the just vast amount of wealth that Amazon has created as a result of bringing goods and service, well, mostly goods, but goods to people
Yeah.
quickly, effectively, affordably, like all of these things from all over the world that people never had access to before. I mean, I'm sure you and I are both old enough to remember the pre-Amazon days where like 5 days to get something would have been amazing, right? Like
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
order something from somewhere else and have it get to you in about a week would have
Yeah.
been spectacular. I mean, you remember the little like, it was always like wait 6 to 8 weeks for delivery or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The 800 number stuff in the middle of the day.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
usually 6 to 8 weeks is what you're looking at is the turnaround time. And now if stuff doesn't get here in 2 days, we're like, ridiculous, right? 2 days,
Right. Yeah.
3 days. I can't even believe it. And so, Amazon is already doing a tremendous amount, and not just Amazon. I mean, all of these companies are doing a tremendous amount just by doing that. But then they're like what Amazon's doing right now in terms of shifting. They're hiring 100,000 new employees. They're raising wages right now. I mean, and it's temporary. We talk about why these things are and probably need to be temporary. This is another thing I think people don't really get. Because I've seen a lot of the arguments like, well, if Amazon could raise their wages to $15 an hour right now, why couldn't they do it all the time? Well, conditions are different right now, right?
Yeah.
Conditions right now, their conditions right now are that they have a tremendous amount of demand. They have a tremendous amount of people flooding their sales system with orders that they cannot currently meet, right? And so not only do they need to hire a ton of people who won't have those jobs forever, but they're hiring a ton of people right now to meet that demand. They're also shifting their warehouse operations towards high value stuff, in particular medical supplies and things that kind of fall into the healthcare category. Like that's amazing. Yeah. And that's just inside the operation of the business itself, And then you've got other companies. I posted about, because I got an email from Expensify, but our FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education, where I work, uses Expensify to track and report our business expenses. And I didn't even know this. Expensify regularly, normally in normal times, they have a program that supports the paying off of poor kids' student lunch debt. Because we've seen that this is sometimes a problem for some families where they rack up some bills over the course of the year. They can't pay them off. Expensify goes in and pays off some of that debt for them. So what Expensify did, because schools are shut down all over the country, is shift that charitable program to paying off debt to actually paying off SNAP charges. So it frees up people who were in the same category, right? Low-income people who needed state support to begin with, who were using their SNAP, budget basically for family meals, who then had this additional expense of having to pay for lunches every day that they weren't paying for, public school. Now Expensify is shifting over to help them cover those expenses while they're not in schools. Stuff like that I'm seeing all over the place, and it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many like stories of hope, of people pulling together, and you've got the state kind of doing its thing over here, and then you have the private sector, and maybe sometimes in conjunction with public sector initiatives or permission or whatever. But like, I'm just I'm filled with hope because I see these stories all the, coming up. And then you've got people like even the non sort of economic things like Italians singing from windows,
Yeah,
to keep each other entertained and stuff. It's like, I read, I think it was Nick Gillespie's article in Reason, or the headline was like, "We've got this. Like, we're
yeah,
human. We're
yeah.
going to pull through this. The coronavirus isn't going to, obliterate us or anything like that. It might be painful, but like we have the resilience in a huge way to kind of get through this because we are, social beings."
I think we're in better shape today. Humanprogress.org ran a post
Yeah.
yesterday, 2 days ago,
Yep.
talking about how rapidly we're responding to, just from a scientific standpoint, responding to this outbreak versus how much time went by before we figured out solutions to previous outbreaks. And you can see the pace accelerating, shockingly quickly. I mean,
It's like that hockey stick graph, it's like,
it
it's just,
really
yeah.
is. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's thousands of years of, influenza and bubonic plague and tuberculosis and all of these things. And then it's like 15 years for AIDS. And now it's like 5 years for, I think, H1N1. And now now we're at, months potentially before we find legitimate solutions. And look, it may not be a vaccine. It may not be this hydroxychloroquine or any of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
I'm not really sure what the right answer is going to be, but the speed at which we're able to mobilize all of this dispersed knowledge from all over the world, bringing it together to attack a very specific problem.
Yeah.
We have amazing opportunities now that literally could never have existed prior to this moment in time. And I'm super optimistic about that part of it. I'm super pessimistic about the part where we're seeing a tremendous explosion in people's calls for police states all over the country. Like, I have seen just regular citizens, even people I've known who I really would not have expected to crack this quickly on an issue like this,
Yeah.
are calling for total lockdowns, preventing people from leaving their homes, mandated restrictions of travel, immigration restrictions. Like, it's the whole gamut of stuff that we saw after 9/11, but like amped up to even a more excessive, like crazier degree of just immediate jump towards, okay, let's just create a totalitarian gulag and just make the entire United States live with this. Yeah. Oh, don't worry, it's only going to be temporary. Oh, God, guys, this stuff is temporary. Like, that's not how this happens.
Yeah. I think we would be better served as libertarians and people on the lookout for encroachments on liberty to be like, there's a little bit of me that's like, all right, we need to accept whatever it is that happens, because it's not like this is a matter of us voting what we get to have, but be like, look, be on the lookout and say, okay, fine, you did this, but this has to be temporary, and make sure that our lawmakers know that that's what we want it to be.
Yeah. I mean,
we don't want these measures to be long-term.
That's our only choice for a lot of the stuff that's already happened. I mean, we've already seen citywide lockdowns and things like that. And there's not much you can do about that part of it. Certainly not after the fact. But I mean, I do think that, I feel a decent amount of responsibility right now to try to, as much as I can, reduce some of. It's not that I can necessarily have that much of an effect, but like, if I can reduce some people's anxiety about this, I'm going to try to do that for right now.
Yeah.
The problem is what I've found, and we're living in a kind of an odd psychological moment too, which is that like even attempts at trying to reduce anxiety backfires, because people are already in such a state of sort of hyperactive, like emotional response, that saying, hey, like let's actually like even if you look at China, for example, and let's say you don't believe China's numbers because it's China, fair, right? But let's say they had double the amount of deaths that they claimed. Let's say they had 6,000 deaths, even 9,000 deaths. That's terrible, right? But in a country of 2 billion people,
Yeah.
it's a pretty small number of people that we're actually talking about. And yeah, it's scary because there's a lot of unknowns in all of this, and there's a lot of information flying around, but like, just take a step back and say, okay, look, it's a disease. It seems like the vast majority of cases are pretty mild. Some cases need hospitalization. A lot of people who have had more severe problems are people in demographics that we kind of expect to have more severe reactions to these kinds of things. People with pulmonary problems, people with, people with cancer, elderly people. Okay, fine. Let's look out for all of those people as much as we possibly can. But also let's realize that, like, if we're between the ages of 15 and almost 50, the risks are pretty low.
Yeah.
We're going to be okay. Like, we can sort this out. It's just, I'm seeing, like, anytime I say anything even remotely like that, half of the backlash is like, you're not taking this seriously. And, everybody's
right. It's like, what is an indicator? Like, what is the virtue signal for taking this seriously enough?
Yeah.
It's like,
I don't know. I mean, I'm super in favor of people being very precautious, especially for themselves. The other thing I think is missed in all this, one thing I wrote yesterday at some length, is that, like, one of the core lessons of economics is, and especially if you come to it from an Austrian tradition, as Fee does, is that knowledge is decentralized, right? And the world operates based on orders that emerge spontaneously because everybody has a tiny little piece of information. And that's not less true now, right? Like, it's actually more true right now. There are individuals all over the United States, all over the world, who have very specific knowledge of their own personal risk factors. And instead of trying to, like, lock down the entire society, it seems to me, at least, that it would be far better and much less of a long-term danger to the economic health of the world, and also just the totalitarian state of the world, if what we were trying to do was encouraging people to really look inward, think about their personal risk factors, and then make decisions based on those factors that are best for them, right? And not rely on centralized bodies to just dictate, oh, this is what literally everyone has to do. And one of the reasons why I think that that's really important is because, like, for example, my wife and I, very good health, but we live in a suburban part of Atlanta where all of our neighbors are retired. Almost everybody that lives in our neighborhood is over the age of 50, if not most are over the age of probably 60, 65. Our two neighbors that are both on the right and left side of us, we're very close with, and we have just about every day we've texted them to make sure that they're okay. We've offered to go run errands for them and things of that nature.
Yeah.
We can do that. We can take those risks right now. Whereas I'd rather that they didn't, like I'd rather that if they needed to go to the hardware store or something, like, I can do that for them, and even if I do get sick, I'm almost certainly going to be totally fine. Right. But those are little local knowledge things that we can sort out if we're allowed to sort those things out ourselves. You can't really do with a blanket lockdown,
Right.
And by the way, one of my neighbors who is, probably very close to 70, has been going shopping and kind of going about her life kind of as normal, not because she's oblivious to this. She's a very smart woman. She's very up to speed on all of this stuff. She recognizes that for her personally, her risks are a lot lower than most of her friends. So she's been taking advantage of things like Walmart does an elderly only sort of senior shopping. I'm going to say shopping hour, but it's a few hours every morning.
Yeah.
Or actually it's not every morning, but it's like a couple days a week.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
and again, going back to that point about business changing and facilitating this stuff, tons of grocery, Target, Walmart, Dollar General, a lot of stores are doing this like seniors only shopping period.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that, didn't come from the FDA, didn't come from the CDC,
Nope.
the
Yep.
president. Nobody dictated that they do that. They're just a heck of a lot more adaptable, you know.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah,
And
no,
meanwhile,
that's what encourages me a lot, is that a lot of these decisions is, people, use the term we, in sort of sloppy ways. It's like, well, we did this and we got through it. And it's like, well, okay, like in some ways we, the government, that doesn't make any sense, but like the government dictates a few things, and
yeah,
they're going to try to take the credit. But like, yeah, like our local grocery stores, Costco, I haven't been to Target since, but like, they're all making decisions that are good, for people. And you see these signs on the doors. It's like, we're opening early for seniors, and I'm
yeah,
like, well, great, because they're the ones that need to get stuff early, and like could be the worst hit by people who could be hoarding more than
yeah,
they should.
yeah,
And
and
I use that word advisedly. Yeah.
sure. But, and we're seeing the same kind of thing. I mean, look, I am particularly concerned. My background's in music, and I worked in the entertainment industry before I started doing what I do now. And which, for those who don't know, I'm the director of media for Fee, creative director. So what I do is create videos. You can see my various things back there, but
You have that YouTube play button. Tell us about that for a
do
sec.
indeed.
Could
So that's when I started at Fee in 2016, and in about 2017, I started really focusing my attention on YouTube. In about a year and a half, I grew that channel from basically no subscribers. We had 13,000, I think, when I started, to now it's at about 141,000, somewhere in there. So I'm real proud of that. That's a really cool thing. One of the things I do on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Fee online, is a show called Out of Frame, which is my video essay series. Mostly I talk about pop culture and the connection between pop culture and different ideas. The episode that we're releasing next week actually could not be better timed in a lot of ways, which is I was doing it. It was an episode I wanted to do for a long time on Captain America Winter Soldier. The original idea being to sort of time this with the release of the Black Widow movie that was originally scheduled to come out first thing in May.
Yeah.
And which has now been moved, and I don't know if they're going to release that streaming or what. But Winter Soldier, if you haven't seen it, is all about fear leading to a draconian political reaction, right? In the movie, it's about the SHIELD, the sort of state agency that oversees, the sort of state defense agency, building a set of basically flying death ships that could murder anyone on Earth at anyone's whim at any time, in basically the blink of an eye or the flip of a switch or whatever. And Captain America battling that because he sees that as a massive violation on people's civil liberty and a power structure that really shouldn't exist. And so, I'm talking about that in that context, but I'm seeing the same kind of thing play out now, which is, I told the story in the episode that we're about to release next week. I tell a story about my experiences when 9/11 happened, and thinking through what the response was going to be from the government, basically. And it worried me a great deal then. I feel the same way right now. I'm seeing a lot of, not only a lot of these kinds of draconian measures, but also a lot of public support for it because the public is afraid, and that's the thing that scares me. I think the civil society response is always overwhelmingly incredible. Like, you just immediately see people starting to help each other and doing really cool things, and businesses changing the way that they're operating.
Yeah.
But
We're proving Alexis de Tocqueville right still.
yeah, we are. But the public response is often terrifying, and that's the part that I'm certainly concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's, it's that Hayek thing, like the worst tend to get on top, and then now they're on top and in control to a
Yeah,
large extent.
yeah,
And it's going to the backlash to things like governors shutting things down without the right authority is not going to change that they do it.
right.
It's going to change later in the courts, and
Hmm.
people might not even know. They might even win. The courts might even
Yeah,
side with the states,
yeah.
actions. So yeah. Well, hey, Sean, you've given me like way more time than I asked you for this conversation, so
No
I
problem.
really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, anytime. Love to chat more about this stuff.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
everybody check out Out of Frame. It's a great video essay series, Sean. All the stuff you produce for fee is just amazing. So thanks for chatting.
Thank you. Appreciate it.